Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
I don't know about you, but I'm buzzing after that episode.
Whoa.
Holy smokes. I don't know, man, but I love Karen, right? And I know we both know her outside
She's
of
the best.
work, and she's just incredible. And she just so happens to be working for an incredible agency, and they do some really, really good work.
Yeah,
it's globally recognized, and the fact that it's all local, so to speak, right?
Totally.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, they're honestly, all the awards they've been winning and stuff, it's
insane.
It is. It's insane how much they win, and not just like these are effectiveness awards and work effectiveness awards and like all that stuff. It's not just because it's good creative. It's actually the impact that they're having on these brands is insane.
I agree. And I think what I appreciated the most is not only did they take the time to talk to us, but they broke it down as well. Like there's to do this consistently. What's the saying that you always say, like every blind squirrel can find a nut at times or something like that?
That's like me in hockey.
I heard your 1-game point streak came to an end last night as well.
It did.
That's unfortunate. Yeah. But to create this not legacy. Well, maybe it is turning into a legacy because the agency's been around for 13 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Longer. I don't know exactly, but I think it's
longer than that.
Yeah, because Morgan was saying something about
she's been there as long as they have, as the agency has. So I think she said 13 years.
Oh, okay.
I could be mistaken, but anyways, they've been able to have repeated success here.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's something that's working. There's a framework in place, and obviously, the first thing that comes to mind to me is that Crafts framework. I thought it was really well articulated. I think it kind of captures not only the ethos of what they're trying to do, but also the method to create that success that they have.
Yeah, I thought there was so many interesting things about that too, because the idea of creative, and I know probably all of us have some way been in a creative meeting where there's, the agency comes in, they've got this deck, almost no words on it, and just a couple images, and they're really good at presenting, and then you're sitting there at the end of it going, okay, well, now what?
Now what?
And so, and especially when you've got people from, say, purchasing in a room, or like the CFO in a room, or, people that aren't traditionally creative minded or creatives, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting there going, okay, well, I don't know. Do you like it or not?
I know.
Like trying to find a way to have a good, meaningful conversation around creative is often challenging.
Yeah.
When you've got so many different people in a room.
I agree.
So many different backgrounds. So the crafts framework for me is brilliant because it allows people a way to speak about stuff, and it doesn't make them feel like they're idiots, let's say.
Totally.
They now have a way to have a communication approach about something that is somewhat ethereal.
Yeah, and it's also, you can also judge it based on these things. So just, again, for clarity, for those that, probably were scurrying, trying to write down what it is. So CRAFT stands for clarity, relevance, achievable, fresh, truth, and shareable. Now, when you think about that, even when you have a campaign that's in market, you can then assess it based on those things as well. Like, is the message clear? Do we have that credit? Is it culturally relevant? And I like that both Morgan and Karen consistently talked about that. Like, it's going to change, but the more you can make something that resonates culturally in the moment, the better opportunity it has to be successful. Is it achieving what we set out to do? Execution, the feasibility, and the quality of it. The freshness. The approaches, and really thinking about how can it be a world first, so to speak, kind of keep things really, really, I don't want to overuse the word fresh, but it's fresh, I guess. Truth, your own brand's truth. And, that it's not a big departure of who you are, what you stand for. Yeah. And it's still somewhat, a consumer can make that connection. Oh yeah, that is Apple, or that is TELUS, that is WestJet. And then finally that is shareable. And I think they're making, it's not just shareable, say on social, but it's like cocktail party shareable. Something that you're really excited to talk about, which again, when you think about that framework, it's really easy to see why they've had that kind of success or that ongoing success. Because if this is the rigor that they apply to it, along a few other things that I'm sure we're going to highlight, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, that example of it has to be Heinz, the idea of the brand truth, I thought was really, it really kind of landed for me in that you want any piece of creative to be a platform for the brand.
Yeah.
And so the idea of it has to be Heinz as a gut check, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was fascinating was their idea about the relationship accelerator.
100%.
Because you don't, in the moment of like a campaign needing to go out is not when you have to have all of these conversations about how do we work together, what are the guidelines, what's the sandbox we can play. Because if you're doing all of that in the moment, that's a lot of stuff to kind of work through.
I agree. And you end up doing none of it at the end of it today. Having that in place up front, I think also kind of gives you, even from Rethink's perspective, understanding all the different layers and complexities that every organization has, because some are more marketing forward than others that I'm sure that they've worked with. And setting that expectation, I think goes a long way at the onset.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would really love to highlight that say the thing.
Oh yeah.
Like that for me was amazing, because we've all, again, been in those meetings where in our minds, like, we know exactly what the feedback needs to be.
Yeah.
But we dance around it. We're not very direct with it. But creating that space to be really direct in those moments by just saying, I'm just going to say the thing that everyone's thinking right now, I think is incredible. A nice little like tactic to use.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. I'm going to definitely steal that, because you're right.
Me too.
There's also, you can talk about, I think it came from that Radical Candor book or whatever the framework was called. But yeah, like courageous conversations as an example was one of the things I remember hearing in a bunch of different organizations that, that we really encourage courageous conversations and have candor and all that kind of stuff. But then it doesn't really land, because it's also a little bit foreign. Like, what does that really mean? And so to have something like say the thing as a tool, I get it. I'm just going to say the thing. Like, I instantly can adopt something like that.
Like immediately it can be applied. And just when you say it, I think it naturally, like as a receiver of that phrase, you're almost like, okay, I'm preparing myself for something to be really direct. And I think it's an incredible cue to use when you're trying to get a message across.
Yeah. Especially because then it's not tied to me, for example. Like, I feel like I would just be something I would throw out as a thing to address because it's a thing.
Exactly.
Not because it's necessarily my opinion. It's just it's something we have to speak about and figure out what the solution is around it.
Another success factor. So we talked about the relationship accelerator. We talked about say the thing. Another one that comes to mind that I know we have 100% seen this, not only at our time together, but like we continue to see this, is focus on building trust and removing bureaucracy. I think that's a big one where every organization is guilty of this in some capacity, where you have too many layers that could impact your speed to market or could impact really creative ideas, because everyone's focused on that focus group of one, where you have 3 or 4 key stakeholders that hold the trump cards, if you will. And if they're not aligned to something, then it goes to die. And I think really, really getting ahead of that is a big step in creating that right sandbox for creatives to really excel.
Yeah. And the idea that I think it was Morgan saying, if they've got an idea and it gets wounded along the way.
Yeah. That's a great,
Yeah. Sometimes I think a lot of us would be in a position of me, for sure. I would want to fight for an idea and like tooth and nail to the bitter end. And her take on it was just let it die.
It's dead.
Yeah. Which is kind of refreshing, because it also, like say the thing, it disconnects you from it being something about me, and it's just about the idea. And there's lots of ideas. So let's come up with a better one.
Totally. What was the other things, like the whole everyone wants to herd their sheep of ideas, the little sheeps into becoming lambs, or sorry, lambs to become into sheep, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think Morgan kind of used that. Sometimes it's your idea may be good, but like in that moment, maybe we just we need to move on to something different, and it's okay. And having that thick skin, I think, goes a long way, especially if you're creative. The last one I had from a success factor and was balance between emotional storytelling and product messaging. Making sure that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be finding that balance between both, I think goes, again, a long way to creating some of those incredible ads. Apple does it.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Well, and a little bit like what we were just discussing too. I mean, with brand versus performance, it's not necessarily that it has to be in either or.
No.
Like you can have, and you've made this point a couple times, which I think is great. You can have a performance campaign that is really well branded.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Similarly, I think you can have a very emotional campaign that has a great product placement in it. It doesn't have to be all one or all the other.
Exactly.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. What else stood out for you?
I think it's more just the stories around how they got to like they won the Cannes Lion for effectiveness for Heinz, but the stories behind Heinz, the stories behind WestJet, the stories behind TELUS. I think for me, it's the creative is great.
Yeah.
But it's more the systems and processes that
100%.
allow them to do that, and repeatedly do that, which is fascinating to me. So like the Heinz one, they have ads and acts. I know that was a thing. And so it kind of reminds me of the promise to the customer as well, where it was seemingly ranch, that thing.
Yeah.
And so in a moment, they're able to turn this around. And in the case of Heinz, the act was that they had a product called, what was it called again? It's a weird word for cranch. Yeah. So they already had the product, but then they could just put new labels on it, seemingly ranch. So then the message isn't just a hollow message. It also is backed up by the product. I know one thing they didn't talk about, but I know it was the work they've done is the Shohei Ohtani and Coors Light can, where
the pixel.
Shohei Ohtani hit a dinger and knocked out the lights on the billboard right when the Coors Light can was on.
Yeah.
And then it blacked out a square.
Yeah.
On the Jumbotron.
That was amazing.
And then they turned that around into an ad, which then became this viral sensation, which then they turned into collector edition cans, which then turned into like Coors Light being the number one requested beer in Japan. And then it became, and they started supplying Japan. It's this whole thing where it just caught fire, but they fueled it all along the way. And so the nimbleness of an organization to be able to do that, and the trust they have in being able to do that, starts with, I think, that relationship accelerator as a platform where you work out some of the details around, like, what is it like to be good? What does bad look like? What are the borders around this brand playbook that we can work in? And if we're in this, will you sign off on stuff like this?
Totally.
Yes, no, cool. And then they're able to execute almost in real time with that read and react kind of approach, which I think is fascinating.
And it's paramount to have success.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to summarize this podcast, it's emphasis on structure, on the creative processes, is maintaining the really strong client relationship, removing those barriers internally through that, like you said, that relationship accelerator, but then having that cultural awareness to drive really successful advertising campaigns. I think it was Morgan that kept talking about this. It's like you have to be naturally curious to look at everything that's happening in your world or around you in that moment to see how you can put that into effect successfully for your client.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that natural curiosity, then you'll miss out on some of those real, dare I call them, like viral moments, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it was an awesome conversation.
It was great.
They're so good. And they do such great work, to your point at the beginning. Like, it was really fun. I feel like it was a masterclass in a lot of ways.
I agree.
It's just,
this podcast is a masterclass for marketers.
Exactly. It totally is.
That's our new positioning.
Yeah. Go chase profitability with your masterclass in marketing. Brought to you by
the Sleeping Barber. Or V and Mark, I guess.
Either way.
Anyways, yeah, it was great. Karen, Morgan, if you're still listening, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Actually, exactly. It was nice to record in local time. We don't do that very often, but always appreciated.
Yeah. Okay, V. Well, we'll talk to you soon. Again.
Yeah, man.
Very soon.
Very soon, actually.
Yeah. And thank you for listening and keeping us in your ears.
There it is. Let's just make it a thing. That's our thing. Done.
Yeah. We got a lot of things. I'm just going to say the thing. We got a lot of things.
I love that. All right, buddy.
All right.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye.